go by that clock on the wall and back there, and right now it says it is 6:30 and time to begin this first of the spring candidates forum sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Athens County and the Athens Public Library. We're pleased you are here this evening. I'm Ed Baum, and I sort of coordinate these little get-togethers that we have a couple of times a year, and we hope you're here to learn and to appraise the candidates. I will give a couple of introductions, just so you know what happens here. Ellsworth Holden is our moderator, and he'll give some instructions to you. We have people who, when you have a question, you write it on a piece of paper, raise it up, and we have people who will come around and pick them up. And we have, find out, Mary Lee Powell. Where are you, Mary Lee? Back here. She'll come pick them up, take them to our reviewers, and we have reviewers because each question should be able to be answered by both candidates. So we have no gotcha questions here. And Tanya Conrad and Linda Parsons will be reviewing questions. And we have our timekeeper up here, Debbie Schmeeding, who will keep these people on time. They have 3 minutes to begin. And we have a word of one of our major sponsors from the League of Women Voters of Athens County, Mary Costello.
I am the co-president of the League of Women Voters of Athens County, with Ellsworth Holden, who is the co-president with me. He's moderator this evening. On behalf of our members, I'd like to welcome all of you to this evening's candidate forum. As most of you know, the League provides opportunities for the public to learn about candidates and issues during election season. And we do that because we want us all to be informed voters when we go to the polls. So we try to share that information with all of you. One of the ways we do it is through candidate forums, of which tonight is one. In this primary season, there's only one contested local race, and that is for the 94th Ohio House District representative seat, and 2 Democratic candidates vying to be the Democratic candidate in the fall general election to run against the Republican candidate. Those 2 Democratic candidates are Sarah Grace and Eddie Smith, and we're very glad they're here this evening. We're looking forward to learning about their candidacies. Since there's only one contested local race, our local league decided to sponsor a second candidate forum for these 2 candidates to increase their exposure in the community. And that second forum will be on March 1st in Nelsonville at the Nelsonville Public Library at 6:30 in the evening. So if you know people who weren't able to be here this evening, encourage them to attend that forum so they can learn about these 2 candidates. I'd like to encourage you, to invite you to consider membership in the League of Women Voters. If you are interested in joining, on the back table behind Mary Lee are some membership brochures with information about the League, and also a place where you can put your information. It tells about dues and where you can send them. If you'd like to join tonight, see me. I'd be glad to help you out. Also on the back table are a number of other pieces of League literature. Just want to bring your attention to a card that has information, says 3 ways to make voting a breeze. On the back, 5 things you need to know on election day. There are some bumper stickers. Take a friend to vote. So if you would like to have one of those, please take it. And finally, there is a card about judicial votes, about the judicial races. The League of Women Voters, in conjunction with a number of other organizations in Ohio, have put together a website where you can go and learn about judicial candidates, about which often there isn't very much information, but there will be now. There are no, as far as I know, contested judicial races in this primary season, but this would be a good reference to have for the future, because we will have contested races in the future. I'd like to thank the library for hosting this, and Todd Bestine especially, for making this a successful and making sure that it will be audible, even though I don't have a microphone, everybody else who's going to speak does, so that's going to be good. Thank you to the media for being here. Thank you to the government channel for recording this evening's event, so you can watch it again on television. So I'm going to turn it over to Ellsworth Holden, who is this evening's moderator.
Let me make sure this is working properly, because I'm user, not technician. Okay.
Someone ought to get you out of the well, though.
It's very echoey.
Too much echo? Well,
It is echoey.
at any rate, I'm user, not technician. So, welcome to this Candidates Forum, sponsored by the Athens Public Library and the League of Women Voters of Athens County, Ohio. And we believe this is an important event in providing information about candidates to help create an informed electorate. Tonight, we have the two candidates for the Democratic nomination for the 94th House District. And let me review the rules for this evening, and this was sent to the candidates beforehand. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement, and the order was determined by lot just a few minutes ago, and it will be Eddie Smith first and Sarah Grace second. Then we'll have questions to the candidates from the representatives of the news media, and this evening we have Sarah Brumfield of the Messenger, David DeWitt of the News, Susan Tebben of UB, and Caitlin Focasato from the Post. And each of them will ask 2 questions, and then we'll turn to questions from the audience. And it looks as though some are already coming in here. In fact, there's even a big stack here, so feel free to keep them coming. And each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. And what we will do is, Eddie will give an opening statement, and then Sarah, first question, Eddie answers first, Sarah second, and then we reverse the order going on down through. And after questions from the panel, then we'll go to questions from you in the audience, and then we need to be out of here by 8 o'clock, because the library closes then, and we do not want to wear out our welcome, so that we have to hold these out on the riverbank. So about 20 till we'll stop questions and have a closing statement from each candidate, and those will be, I think it's 2 minutes, I'll check it before that time comes. And so, do we want our candidates to, you want to step up here? And you're welcome to stand or sit, your choice. And first opening speech will be by Eddie Smith for 3 minutes.
All right, whenever. Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Hi, folks. My name's Eddie Smith. Many of you probably know me. For those of you who don't, I'm a proud, some feedback, a proud Democrat running a progressive campaign for Ohio's 94th State House District. Real quick, just to give you a little bit of background about me, I grew up in a small community north of Marietta along the Ohio River called Martins Ferry. Growing up, we did not have very much. We lived in low-income public housing most of my life. We depended on food stamps, and I was one of 8 kids. And we moved down here, I moved down here to Athens to study sociology. I was interested in sociology as an academic discipline because I was interested in studying what the barriers are to upward mobility in society. That is, studying why some hardworking families just can't seem to get ahead. And so I finished my bachelor's in sociology here at OU, and then I stayed for the next 2 years to work towards my master's in sociology. And at the master's level, you really start to get exposure, and you learn what specific programs and services need funded if you're going to help low-income families get over those barriers. But while you know which programs and services need to be there, you don't necessarily know how to get them funding, you don't know how to make it work in a budget, you don't know how to institute them. And so right now I'm finishing up my master's in public administration from the Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs. I'm concentrating in tax policy, public budgeting, and financial management and government. To tools that are necessary for the job of being a state representative. I'd like to real quickly tell you a little bit how I'm involved here in our local community. I work for a local community food initiative called Shagbark Seed and Mill. I have some coworkers in the back. But we're an organic grain mill. We supply the community with healthy non-GMO corn and grains and other nutritious products. I also work for them at the farmers market on the weekends. And I serve on our Athens County Energy Task Force. I serve on the Athens City Transportation Task Force. I've done some volunteer work with Upgrade Athens County. I also serve as the president of the Ohio University Graduate Student Senate, where I serve on a number of committees, including the Budget Planning Council, the Transportation and Parking Committee, just to name a couple. But I'm tremendously excited to be here tonight. Real fast to thank my so many supporters here, without whom this campaign would not be possible. I'd like to thank County Commissioner Chris Schmiel for really believing in me and getting behind me throughout this race. I'd like to thank Debbie Phillips for her tremendous work in the State House. She's definitely leaving big shoes to fill. And also like to thank my lovely partner, Emily. She's been so supportive throughout all this. She's really very wonderful. But thank you all very much. That's enough about me. So thank you.
Thank you, Eddie Smith and Sarah Grace.
Thank you. Thank you to the League and the library, and thank you everyone who's here. This is incredible. I love that so many of you care enough about what is happening in our community to come out and listen and provide input. It's wonderful, and I'm really honored to be here tonight. My name is Sarah Grace, and I am a local business owner and a mother of 4 living here in Athens. And I first came to Athens as a college student. I was attracted to Ohio University because of the academic program that I wanted to pursue. And so I came to check it out. And I decided to stay because it was so beautiful. The hills, the campus. I really think it reminded my family and I of Vermont, where we had lived for many years. And I came as a student to OU. I had 4 wonderful, happy years as a college student and graduated, moved away for work and for my husband to attend law school. After that, though, we moved right back to Athens. I've heard that maybe Athens gets into your blood or becomes a part of your soul. And for us, that was definitely true. We left for a short time but came back because this is where we wanted to raise our family. And so I've now lived here for nearly 19 years, and it truly is my home. I'm now running for the Ohio House of Representatives because I'm committed to working for the future of my home, the home of my family. And I believe that it is a wonderful place where so many people are so invested in what happens here. I want to be able to reach out to the people who are here, to listen and hear what your concerns are, hear what is important, and take those concerns to Columbus and represent you. I want to work to be sure that our schools are fully and fairly funded. I want to work for all of our families. These families need the protection of paid family medical leave. They need access to affordable health care that includes treatment for mental illness and addiction. Addiction is a growing problem here. And I want to work for the workers of this district, those who are working every day to provide for their families and to ensure that they are protected in what they are working for. Thank you again for coming out, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Sarah. And now we'll turn to members of the news media for some questions. And first, Sarah Brumfield of the Athens Messenger.
Hi. Sorry to throw this question so early out, but do you think medicinal or recreational marijuana should be legalized in Ohio? And if so, do you think it should be initiated by citizens or members of the state legislature?
Eddie, you're first on that one.
Yeah, that's a great question. I absolutely think marijuana needs to be regulated so that it can be responsibly used for recreational purposes. I think we have a lot of land here in Athens County. We have a lot of farmers who could definitely benefit from regulating, the production of marijuana in a way where it's not being controlled by a monopoly, where all of our farmers have the legal right to grow it and to earn, a living wage. And yes, I absolutely support the regulation of marijuana for responsible recreational use. And I think that could absolutely be something conducted by the state legislature. Yeah. So, yeah, thanks.
Sarah?
Thank you. I'm going to attempt to answer sitting down. The mic is working. Is
Yes.
everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Then I believe that there is a lot of support throughout Ohio for especially medicinal marijuana. I believe that there's many studies that show the benefits of that. And I do not believe that the recent referendum is representative of the feeling of the citizens in the state, because there was a lot of confusion thrown into that decision by people's opposition to the monopoly. So I believe that legalization is the direction that we are headed as a state, and that it is something that could be safely and reasonably done either by the legislature or by referendum, although I think perhaps more efficiently by a legislature. And Kentucky has already legalized hemp, and I think that in time that is the direction Ohio is going as well.
Thank you, Sarah. And Sarah, you'll address the next question first, and for that we will turn to David DeWitt of the Athens News.
Thank you, Ellsworth. The 94th District is a diverse place with a lot of different people with a lot of different interests and priorities. You have Ohio University students, Hocking College students, farmers, blue-collar workers, landowners. What would your philosophy be to represent all of those interests and all of those different constituencies in the Ohio State House? Thank you.
Thank you. That is definitely something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, because this is a diverse district. Athens is a wonderful blue bubble within the Southeast Ohio district. But I have spent a lot of time recently getting to know the people in Marietta and in rural Washington County. My husband grew up in Meigs County. So I feel that while some of our interests may initially appear to be very different, all of us want to work for a better future for Ohio. And focusing on education and healthcare, bringing sustainable jobs. As some industries are going to be leaving and closing, we need to be sure that we are providing training for high-paying quality jobs that our residents can go to in the future. And I believe that that is something that is possible throughout the district and is important to everyone throughout the district. And I know that I've had a lot of experience in talking with people with very diverse interests, and finding common ground is possible. And that's something that I am able to do when I'm working within a group.
Thank you, Sarah. Eddie?
Yeah, the 94th State House District is definitely diverse. In this district, we've got 4,000 small farmers. In this district, we've got 15,000 teenagers between the ages of 15 and 18 who are getting ready to go to college pretty soon. We've got thousands of union workers. It's a diverse landscape, and it's a challenge representing all those interests in the State House. I absolutely agree. When it comes to a philosophy on how to represent those interests, I come from a low-income background, and my philosophy from very much a sustainability standpoint is creating equity for folks who need help over those barriers, for small businesses that need support from the government, for small farmers who need a level playing field with big agriculture in Ohio. So my philosophy for addressing the needs of multiple constituencies is to is to help out, the little folks on the bottom, first. So, thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. And then you'll address the next question first, so I guess you're all both set on that. I won't spend my time reminding you. So I'd like to turn to Susan Tebben of WOUB for the next question. Susan?
Is this one on too? Okay. You can both hear me?
Yes.
All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about, there's a Planned Parenthood defunding bill that's obviously waiting for, I believe still waiting for the governor to sign it, which he said he's going to do. I wanted to see, since there is a local Planned Parenthood in Athens that I believe does not conduct abortions, but it is still here and receiving funding, what is your feeling about the defunding bill, and how do you believe that the House, what do you believe the role is of the House and the legislature in dealing with funding for those kinds of facilities?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks don't realize that out of the 28 Planned Parenthood facilities throughout Ohio, only 3 of them actually perform abortions. And as you said, Athens is one of the other 25. And Planned Parenthood provides a range of healthcare services that women need. They provide cervical cancer screenings. I think they provide breast cancer screenings. Last year they provided 36,000, Ohio's Planned Parenthood provided 36,000 cancer screenings. They also provide UTI treatments. They give references for adoption. They are a wonderful service and resource for women's health and women's advancement. And it is an absolute shame that the House, or that the state Senate and the state House are passing these bills. That the governor has said he's going to sign them. The role for legislators going to the state House, I believe, is to be an assertive voice for women's advancement, for giving women control and autonomy over their reproductive health. I can't promise any time in the near future we'll have a big Democratic swing coming back in the State House, but I can promise I will continue to be an assertive voice, and it'll be a priority of mine to make sure that this voice is heard and that women's reproductive health concerns are loud and clear in the State House.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. Okay, so they say, in business or politics, it's not personal. For me, this is personal. This one is really personal. I had cancer when I was 24. I was unable to receive health insurance after that. I was young. I had a child. I was married. I could not get health insurance. Planned Parenthood was accessible and affordable, provided reproductive health care, it provided follow-up care. It is essential, and it makes me sad, but more than that, it makes me angry that people do not understand how vitally important it is that women and men and families have easy, affordable access to the health care that they need. And that is something that I will fight for no matter what the condition of the legislature. Health care should always be available, and it should be easy, and women it shouldn't have to be something we fight for. Women need to know that they have access to the health care that they need.
Thank you. Now for the next question, we'll turn to Caitlin Pokesato of the Ohio University Post. Caitlin?
Thank you. You both mentioned families earlier in your opening statement, and I was just wondering, what new programs do you believe are necessary to kind of break down some of the barriers in upward mobility of some of the local families in Athens County?
Thank you. I think that in a recent legislative proposal from the Ohio House Democrats, there are several plans that would greatly benefit families. And one of those that I think is critical is that families, men, women, have access to paid family medical leave. Many people have times in their lives, almost everyone is going to have a time in their life when they require time off work in order to care for either their own health or the health of a family member, and they should not risk having to lose their job or their home in order to do that. So I think a family medical leave plan would be a wonderful thing for the people of Southeast Ohio. I think that raising the minimum wage would be wonderful. It would allow approximately 1 million Ohioans to be able to afford the basic necessities and would then allow them to support themselves and their families. So those are two straightforward approaches that I believe would help families.
Thank you. Eddie?
Yes, I absolutely also support Family Leave Act and higher minimum wage. But at the same time, if you look at the statistics on this county, we have a 35% poverty rate, which is the highest in the state of Ohio. Some people argue that that statistic is skewed by the large number of low-income students who don't earn much money throughout the year at a high university. But one statistic that's absolutely not skewed is the fact that if you look at children under 18 years of age, 31% of them are living in households that are living beneath the poverty line. So you can go to Children and Family Services online. You can review all the statistics there, and it's absolutely a depressing story. And Children and Family Services is absolutely underfunded in Columbus. Part of this job is a budgetary job. In the first 2 months of taking this job, the governor's office will drop off the executive budget to the legislature. It'll be drafted into the main operating appropriations bill, and the Finance Committee will determine a large amount of how much funding our Children and Family Services program will receive. So my response, I plan to go to the State House to serve on the Finance Committee to make sure our district gets the funding it needs to help low-income children get over those barriers throughout their life. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. For the next question, we'll turn again to Sarah Brumfield of the Athens Messenger. Sarah?
Wasn't ready. This might be a rehashing, but what one issue here at home do you believe needs more attention at the State House? I don't know if that's a little too repetitive of the last question. Unless we want to skip to David. I'm sorry,
I didn't understand the question. I'm sorry.
Well, what one issue do you think that is here in Athens, a problem that you think needs more attention at the State House?
Sure. Okay. One issue that I don't hear many people talking about but it impacts our community greatly is support from Columbus for small farmers. Throughout this district right now, as I said earlier, we have 4,000 small farmers. 1,100 of those farmers are right here in Athens County. And last year, they generated $40 million in sales for our local economy. They're a tremendous resource. They provide our communities with fresh, sustainable, healthy food. And they're absolutely not getting a fair deal from Columbus, and they need our support. Right now, there is a bill in the State House that is going to provide $100,000 subsidy to every large CAFO throughout the state of Ohio. No one's talking about this. There are no large CAFOs down here in southeast Ohio at all. None of our farmers will benefit from this. And they're upset because the subsidy is being created to fund concrete line manure pits for these gigantic livestock farms, for these big industrial ag farms. And our farmers practice sustainable farming practices. They don't contribute to large amounts of fertilizer runoff, and they're absolutely getting screwed over every single day in the State House, and it's just not on people's radar. And so that's an issue I would absolutely work to gain resources and state support for our farmers. They provide us with wonderful food, and they deserve a fairer deal.
Thank you. Sarah?
An issue that I've been researching a lot recently and talking with local judges and counselors about is the issue of drug addiction throughout this district. It is definitely an issue in Athens, but it is in the city, throughout the county, and a very serious issue in Meigs, Washington, and Benton County. Opioid addictions are killing the people of our state. They are destroying families and costing businesses and taxpayers. So in recent years, Ohio became the #2 state in the nation, #2 in overdose deaths. Between 2001 and last year, the percentage of patients being treated locally for opioid addiction has risen drastically. For every one that Health Recovery Services saw in 2001, they're seeing 40 or 50 now. That is a crushing epidemic on the entire district. We need more funding for counseling and addiction services, and we need more funding and support for preventative care to help our families that are suffering from this.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll turn to David Dewitt, Athens News. David?
Thank you, Ellsworth. So far, we've touched on a lot of things. We've touched on education and poverty and green energy and farmers. A lot of the times, these interests are competing for the same pool of money in the State House. Representative Phillips has often said that her belief is that budgets are moral documents. And so my question is, with that in mind, how would you rank your priorities when budgeting?
Don't make things easy. I think we have to fight for our future. Our children are our future. We have to fund our schools. If the schools are not sufficiently funded, our children never have a chance. They cannot break poverty cycles. And so I would love for the schools that are in the poorest districts to have the highest funding from the state. Those are the schools where the children need the most support. They should have before school care offered, after school care offered, assistance with food, someone who has the time and the resources to really devote to them. And so I'm sure that I'm somewhat swayed being a parent with 4 kids, but I believe education will build a strong, confident workforce. Education will help keep kids off of drugs. Education will teach kids about protecting our environment. I have to prioritize education.
Thank you. Eddie?
I agree with every single thing Sarah just said. And I would also say education would be my priority. The K-12 level, Strickland's model, which I think we need to bring back. I don't think Kasinge's model is nearly providing Athens schools with the resources they need, but Strickland's model on test outcome evidence-based neutrality has absolutely got to come back. So that schools that are underperforming get the resources they need so that there is a level playing field in terms of what students are learning. But I also want to mention briefly college affordability, because it's the other side of this education problem. And right now, we have so many students and families in this district who are going so far into student loan debt that even with the degree and the job, they're defaulting on their student loans. Right now, Ohio University, right here in our backyard, has the second highest student loan default rate in the entire country. It preceded only by New Mexico State University. The Athens News has a great article about this from last year. But yes, it is creating humongous barriers to upward mobility in society for our young folks, and it is wiping out the savings of the middle class in our district. I'm $83,000 in student loan debt right now, and my case is not atypical. This is happening more and more, and so education, absolutely, K-12 all the way through college.
Thank you. Next question, Susan?
I have to get ready too. Okay. I'm going to go to something that's more of a national topic, but also something that I believe is part of the state discussion as well. The presidential election has touched a lot on gender gap and wage gap issues. Number one, do you think that there are gender and wage equality issues within the state, within the district? And number two, how would you deal with the issue should it come up within the House discussions?
Yes, there are humongous gender wage gap issues right now in our district. Women who perform the exact same responsibilities and duties for the exact same job titles are not compensated equally with their male peers. You ask any sociologist, the gender wage gap is driven by a number of factors. And right now, Senate Bill 385, part of the Focus on the Future legislative agenda, is going to be instituting a gender pay disparity task force. That's legislation I absolutely support. I also support instituting measures past that. Task forces are great, but again, we largely know what many of the factors are driving the gender wage gap. We need to start providing resources like preschool to our districts so that women can have equal opportunity in the workforce. We need to eliminate workplace discrimination against pregnant mothers. I absolutely believe an anti-discrimination law for pregnant mothers would pass in a Republican state house. I 100% believe that. So those are a few ways I think we could begin addressing the gender pay gap, but it's a long road, and it's a pervasive one since a tale as old as time.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yes, there absolutely is a gender and wage gap in the district, the state, the country. And as Eddie said, it is driven by many factors. Our fantastic governor recently said that women don't need paid maternity leave, and that actually hurts them and hurts their wage earning equality. And I take issue with that. He said women should work from home on the internet. So, and that's the answer to the wage gap. What I find very interesting is that in some of the countries where there is the least disparity, those countries have the best paternity leave. If we support our entire families, if we tell our families, you know what, dads can stay home and take care of the kids, and they get paid leave too, our women are more supported. And I think that that's all part of supporting families, because the gender and wage gap is not just about women. It hurts the families and it hurts the men in our communities too.
Thank you. Caitlin, you're next for a question, please.
Continuing speaking about wages, you've both spoken about how you would like to see the minimum wage raised. I was just wondering to what amount you would like to see it raised and why.
Well, in the recent economic agenda that the Democratic candidates in the House and Senate put forward, sorry, trying to think about what I want to say. They proposed a minimum wage increase to $10.10 an hour. And I know that there is sort of a national movement for a $15 per hour increase. And I think that we need to look at our district and the businesses that are here. And I think that $10.10 per hour is a very reasonable and achievable goal. And I think that that is something that could provide a very meaningful difference to families. And if someone is working a full-time job, 40 hours a week, they need to be paid enough so that they're not living in poverty. But we need our businesses to be able to transition and sustain that transition. So I am supportive of the increase to $10.10, and along with that, a minimum wage for servers or anyone who is receiving tips has to be at least half of that.
Thank you. Eddie?
I support raising the minimum wage. It has a lot of short-term benefits. However, in the long run, prices go right back to where they were relative to the wage, and the real wage hasn't really increased at all. The problem with this is because we're trying to address poverty and a living wage by raising just the wage instead of examining the relationship between the wealthiest members of our community and the least wealthy. That is, we're not examining the distribution of wealth. And so, while I absolutely support a minimum wage for creating its short-term benefits, what needs changed here is the distribution of wealth in Ohio and in our district. Right now, in our own county, in our own city, we have administrators working for Ohio University whose gross income for an entire year as an individual is more than 10 times the median salary for our entire county. That is gross inequality. There's no other way to frame it. So I absolutely support a higher minimum wage, but in the long run, we absolutely need to level the playing field here and redistribute wealth in some very real sense. And taxation, I think, has absolutely got to happen on Ohio's millionaire class that continues to benefit from Columbus.
Thank you. Well, now we will turn to questions from the audience, and if you would like to have me repeat it at any time, just say so. And let's see, we're ready with Eddie for this first one. Here we are. What are your plans for economic development and private sector job growth in the district?
Well, if we rewind back to 2007, back when Strickland created Ohio's renewable portfolio standards, those renewable portfolio standards from then until 2014, when Governor Kasich signed Senate Bill 310 and put those on hold, across that 7-year time period, over $1 billion came into the state of Ohio in private investment. It created tremendous job growth, clean jobs. Folks don't even realize right now throughout the United States, there are more clean energy jobs than coal jobs. It's one of the fastest growing sectors of our economy. And it can happen right here in the 94th. We need to bring back the renewable portfolio standards. We need to begin incentivizing the use of clean energy. We have five solar panel companies right here, or solar companies right here in Athens, and we have more solar systems in Athens County than any other county in the entire state of Ohio. So I see tremendous opportunity for economic development and job growth by taking care of our environment, by making sure we're not harming the air, harming the land, and supporting clean energy.
Thank you. Sarah?
I certainly agree with what Eddie has said about the renewable energy standards, and that was a fantastic thing for our state. It was moving our state forward, and since those have been put on hold, we're going backwards. And our own local Dovetail Solar has more jobs out of state now drastically. They do 60% in state and the rest is out of state because conditions are more favorable in neighboring states now than they are here in Ohio. And that is something that we absolutely need to change. Ohio needs to be a leader in clean renewable energy jobs. Something that I think would make an incredible difference for business growth in the rural parts of this district, though, is something that those of us in Athens take for granted, and that is reliable broadband. I can't imagine trying to run a business without access to reliable broadband, and yet much of this district does not have that. We need funding from the state to support that basic 21st century infrastructure technology, and I would work to get that throughout the district.
Thank you. Well, let's turn to the next question from the audience. Please describe your experience with the Ohio State House, both past and present.
I guess that I would have to say my experience with the Ohio State House has been very locally focused in following what has been happening that impacts our local area, specifically with regard to education funding. My first job out of college, however, was working for a legislature, not our own wonderful Ohio State House, but I worked for the Florida House of Representatives, and I learned a great deal about, as a friend recently said, how the sausage is made, and I learned that what is vital to the job of a legislator is being able to sit down and talk with your fellow representatives, talk with your constituents, and study the issues that are being brought to you to move forward in a cooperative, productive way. And I think that experience of understanding how legislation is drafted and what it takes to achieve activity and get things done is vital to my ability to work in the State House here.
I'm going to rewind back to 8th grade. We took a tour of the State House. We met our representatives and state senators. I remember my teachers prodding me to ask a lot of questions. It was a wonderful experience, and I think in some sense it's motivated me to continue this. This past year I enjoyed visiting Columbus, talking with Debbie Phillips, talking with Lou Gentile, talking with the Education Committee last January about higher education concerns, about how we're gonna fund college for so many young folks in our district, and also discussing a number of other areas of higher education policy. But I wouldn't say I've had tremendous State House experience prior to this race, but I have been an active member of our community and lobbying members of the State House.
Thank you. Here's the next question. You have both advocated for programs that would increase expenditures. How would you pay for these programs?
I'm definitely going to sound like Bernie Sanders right now. I think we absolutely have a millionaire class in the state of Ohio. I do not think they begin to pay their fair share of taxes. I don't think they're shouldering the tax burden for being members of our community. And I think we have a lot of opportunities to undo some of these tax cuts that Kasich has created and to start financing a lot of these programs. I would absolutely raise taxes on Ohio's wealthiest. I think anyone who makes over $100,000 a year should have their taxes raised by 0.5% at least. That's how I would fund many of these programs.
Sarah?
Ohio's tax structure in recent years has certainly become more and more regressive. The percentage of income that is paid in taxes by the lowest 20% wage earners in our state has continued to go up, while the percentage paid by the top 1% has gone down. That absolutely has to change. Our governor is currently campaigning and talking about his wonderful rainy day fund. You know where that came from. Money that our local governments need to provide services. If the local governments had the funding that they had been promised, they would be able to provide many of the services that are having to be paid for now by residents who are paying higher tax levies, residents who are paying higher sales tax. These are absolutely regressive taxes, and I would work to reverse those changes, lower the tax or eliminate the sales tax on basic necessities, things that families need to pay for, diapers, and help to balance the budget by shifting the burden away from the lowest wage earners back to the top wage earners and giving our local governments the money that they need to manage the programs that help the residents.
Thank you. Here's the next question. How will you promote a clean energy agenda at the state level?
Enthusiastically. Clean energy is the next industrial revolution. That is where our country is going. Oil and gas prices are falling. The fracking industry is not going to be sustainable. We need to train the workers of our communities. We need to train children who are coming up, whether it's through a community school, or trade program, or technical school, or a college degree. inspire them and help them financially to learn what is necessary for good paying jobs in clean energy. The jobs are there. The opportunities are there. I mean, Athens County has been leading the way with solar, and it's a shame that we've gone backwards in recent years. And we need to work to go back to what was happening prior to those education or those environmental standards being put on hold.
Thank you. Eddie?
Yeah, I'd already spoken earlier about the renewable portfolio standards. Obviously, we need to undo the freeze on those. But I would like to speak briefly about another problem that absolutely needs tackled on a clean energy platform, and that's the net metering rules. Right now in our district, we have homeowners who are being penalized because they're producing too much clean energy. There are a couple in the room I see around here, but yeah, they're producing more energy from their solar panels throughout the year than what they're using, and that surplus of energy is flowing back into their communities, going to their neighbors, providing their neighbors with energy that's not connected to pipelines, not connected to their groundwater, doesn't create any greenhouse gas emissions, and for absolutely no reason that makes sense to me, they're being penalized for it. This has absolutely got to stop. We need better net metering rules. We need to start rewarding members of our community for providing clean, sustainable energy. And the State House absolutely has a big part in this. Right now, PUCO, the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, who sets all these utility rates and tells AEP what they have to charge and what they have to compensate our members for, they're getting bullied around by AEP and by other big utility firms. And the General Assembly absolutely has a role to step in here and to start making sure our clean energy producers are getting rewarded. So, thank you.
Thank you. Here's the next question. Of the 26 states that have a state earned income tax credit, Ohio is one of only 3 that do not make it fully refundable, and it is very small. Would you support increasing Ohio's earned income tax credit and making it fully refundable?
Yes, I would support making Ohio's earned income tax credit fully refundable. It's an area that I haven't researched thoroughly, so I don't have an extensive response on this, but I would absolutely support that and vote for any legislation that made it refundable.
Thank you. Sarah?
My answer is going to be quite similar. This is not something that I've researched recently. My inclination is to say, yes, that sounds like a good thing. I would support that, but I would want to research the issue before giving a definitive answer. So if the person who wrote that question wants to follow up with me, I will be happy to give a more complete answer.
Okay.
Same.
Here's our next question. Ohio legislation has loosened laws continuously on gun rights and concealed carry. With more mass shootings in schools across the country, do you believe that any changes are needed to Ohio's existing gun control laws?
Yes, I do believe changes are necessary. I certainly am not going out on a campaign if I'm coming to take your guns away. I don't think anyone is. But I believe that there are guns that are way too readily available on the market. They are not being tracked sufficiently. If we increased the waiting period for licensing, require testing, follow-up, I think these are some basic measures that could be put in place and still allow responsible gun ownership. Because I do believe that there is such a thing, but I don't believe that that's what we have now.
I'm busy reading the next question.
I can
Sir,
stand
go
up.
right ahead.
Yes, I also support longer waiting periods. Right now, you can go down to the trading post and walk back out with a firearm in 20 minutes. I think we need at least a 3-day waiting period to buy a firearm. I think we also need to close the gun show loophole. Right now, you can go to a gun show anywhere in Ohio and purchase a firearm from another private citizen, and there's absolutely no paperwork to reflect this. There's no background check. It makes absolutely no sense at all. So I'd also say, just going one step further than Sarah, I absolutely think assault rifles play no role in a progressive future in our district. These are obviously combat-designed weapons designed to inflict mass casualties. Their access is too readily available, and right now with mass shootings happening in our society, I think it is the role of the state to control access to military-designed weapons. Yeah, I know that may not be a popular answer in some circles, but yeah, I absolutely support control on assault weapons.
Thank you. These questions are getting longer. Let me read this one twice, which will take about 15 minutes total. I'll read it through twice. Over the last 12 years, Ohio's marginal income tax rates have been lowered by nearly 33%, with much of it benefiting the highest income earners. Would you be supportive of raising income taxes and investing those dollars in things like K-12 education, higher education, rural health care, or mental health drug addiction treatment services? So let me just read it again. Over the last 12 years, Ohio's marginal income tax rates have been lowered by nearly 33%, with much of it benefiting the highest income earners. Would you be supportive of raising income taxes and investing those dollars in things like K-12 education, higher education, rural health care, or mental health drug addiction treatment services?
So I feel like there's probably a delay in when the questions are written and when they get read. If it's not sufficiently clear, I absolutely support higher taxes on Ohio's wealthiest to absolutely fund all 4 of those areas. I guess just to speak on one of them where maybe there aren't enough progressive conversations, when it comes to mental health and substance addiction, right now those programs are not being funded sufficiently in Ohio. If you go to the Ohio Office of Budget and Management website, click on the 2016-2017 biennial budget and scroll down to page 51, you'll find the mental health and addiction services line item budget, and it is abhorrently underfunded. It results in, it's evidenced here locally when Appalachian Behavioral Health Care has just 88 beds, and we have a long waiting list of folks who need inpatient treatment and they're trying to get help. So yes, I'd absolutely support higher taxes on Ohio's wealthiest citizens, and I would use them to fund all of those initiatives, including better mental health care and addiction services. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yes. Yes, I believe that we as a society have an obligation to support those efforts, education, caring for our citizens, and as has been mentioned several times, the tax structure in this state has shifted and is absolutely inappropriate, and we need to fight so that those who are making the least are not being penalized, and the highest wage earners are paying more to care for those that need the help.
Okay, the next question. Over the last couple of years, there have been a couple of bills sponsored in the Ohio General Assembly to ban oil and gas fracking in Ohio. Would you be willing to sponsor or co-sponsor legislation that would ban hydraulic fracking in this state?
I believe that would depend on the circumstances and what other language was included in the bill. I'm not about wasting my time. I am a very busy person, and I believe that this is a change that is coming to Ohio. The future energy and employment is not in the oil and gas industry, but I don't believe that that is a bill that would pass in the legislature. And so I don't know whether I would sponsor or co-sponsor that bill. It would depend on the circumstances.
I would sponsor, co-sponsor, parade about, do everything possible to get a bill passed that would ban fracking in the 94th District in Ohio. Fracking offers very, very little benefit to our communities. I mean, unless you can operate a derrick and pay, the techs who are there and all of your administrative overhead for less than $30 a barrel, then right now you're making no money. Growing up in Martins Ferry, we had fracking. We had a number of gas and oil firms come there and promise us the moon with fracking. A couple of my friends who are in the audience here actually went out and got gas and oil operator certificates. They earned and paid for them. They were credentialed. And this was early on, not with the big boom, but they never got hired on. All those jobs went to folks from North Carolina, or not from North Dakota, from Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas. The job growth was largely a myth. But what they didn't really disclose to us was how unsafe the history of fracking really was. We've had 2,000 drums of frack wastewater dumped right into the Ohio River, where we source our drinking water. We've had a number of accidents on well pads. We've had workers killed on well pads. We've had entire neighborhoods evacuated because of pipeline ruptures. I don't see fracking playing any part in a progressive future here, and I would work very hard to make sure that legislation did get through. I'd give it my best shot. Yeah.
Thank you. Would there be any pressure from the legislature of the state of Ohio upon the federal government not to make any more cuts to veterans benefits, veterans pensions, veterans medical care?
Can you repeat it one more time?
Let's see, and it's you, Eddie.
Could you say it one more time?
I certainly will. Would there be any pressure from the legislature of the state of Ohio upon the federal government not to make any more cuts in veterans benefits, veterans pensions, veterans medical care?
I would certainly do my part to make sure the legislature put pressure on the federal government to stop cutting VA benefits. Right now, there's a lot of veterans in Ohio who are falling through the cracks. The VA is not providing sufficient services, and we need to be a strong voice for veterans in this state and let the federal government know that they need to do their part to stop homelessness, to provide education benefits for veterans, to provide mental health treatment for veterans. The flip side of this coin is Ohio does have a state Department of Veterans Services, and it's abhorrently underfunded. It plays an active role in or it should be playing an active role in making sure that we do not have homeless veterans here in Athens County. And I would try to put as much pressure as I could on the federal government, but I would also try to increase funding for the state Department of Veterans Services.
Thank you. Sarah?
I would absolutely fight against any cuts in funding for benefits for our veterans, whether in Ohio budgets or federal budgets. I would certainly use the full force of my office to apply any pressure I could for that cause. But one thing I think we need to look at is the coordination of the care. In some situations, there are benefits available, but the people who need them don't know how to get them. I've attended several meetings talking about the issue of homelessness among veterans in our area. And one of the biggest problems is knowing where the help is available and making sure that the people who need that are directed to the right resources. Because I believe that while it is underfunded, that there is help available, and we need to work to coordinate our social services so that care can be adequately provided.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and that'll put it pretty close to 20 till. So here we go. In your professional career, what experience do you have in job creation and in budgeting? And Sarah, you're first on that one.
Well, in my professional career, I am a small business owner. I am entirely responsible for managing the budget of that business and paying the people who work for me and balancing, my business is a rental property business here in Athens. And I have to balance what I charge for rent against what my costs are going to be. And I try to charge on the low end because I like to attract graduate students. I find them to be fantastic tenants, and I know that they're living on tighter budgets. And so, but I need to be able to, of course, pay my bills. I have to pay taxes to the county and fees to code enforcement, and I need to pay my maintenance staff. And so I feel that I have a fair amount of relevant experience in providing jobs and managing a budget. And as far as time management, I have 4 kids, and I try to manage their time and mine and their allowances. They get a little out of hand, more so than the business.
Eddie?
I don't own any real estate property locally, so I'm not a landlord. I don't have any experience with managing estates, but I do serve on the university's budget planning council. I've served there for 2 years. We manage a $440 million budget for a major institution. That budget finances a range of services. It finances a police force. It finances facilities management crew. Finances steam tunnels. It finances dining facilities. Pretty much it's an entire city that resides on 700 acres right here in Athens. And yeah, I've served there for 2 years. I've learned a lot about budgeting. I've taken that experience and I've gained some formal training. I've at the Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs, I've concentrated my master's in public administration degree in public budgeting and financial management and government. And so I think I have a fair amount of budgeting experience that would be useful in the State House.
Thank you. Well, I think it's time to turn to closing statements, and since lots were cast for the order, I'll remind you before I put you on why Eddie Smith, you're first with a 2-minute closing statement, and then Sarah. So with that brief introduction, Eddie Smith.
Well, I'm just tremendously excited to be here tonight. I'm very excited to be talking up here next to Sarah, to have so many supportive community members here, to have so many people who really care about politics. This is a wonderful community. As I said, I originally moved down here to gain an education, and Athens left me with so much more than what I thought it would. Athens fundamentally changed who I am. It was a cultural change. It changed the way I see the world and how I view fairness and justice. It was literally a physical change. I used to weigh 150 pounds more than I do now before coming to Athens. Getting access to healthy food and being in a healthy community. And I would absolutely be honored to use my skills and my resources and my training to give back to this community and to be your representative in the State House. Thank you.
Sarah?
Okay, I'll stand up so I can see everybody again now. Thank you once again, everyone, for coming out. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and representatives of the media, the library. Again, this is a fabulous experience for me. I hope educational, informative, enjoyable for you as well. As I mentioned earlier, I believe I have a wide range of experiences and skills that have prepared me to represent this district. I've worked in the legislature, I've managed, owned a business, I've volunteered, served on committees. I've been involved here for a long time, and I love this place. What I've learned about myself as an adult living in Athens is something that other people had to tell me, and that is that I'm good at listening to a broad range of opinions, feelings, concerns, and bringing those people together, bringing them together to work for a common cause. And I believe that that is absolutely needed at the State House. I would love if our State House currently had a fantastic Democratic majority, but we don't, and unfortunately that's not likely to change for a few years. I'm working on it, but we have to be able to work together to achieve our goals. And I want to take the concerns and the passions of the people of this district to Columbus. As has been said by Ted Strickland, don't mistake my kindness for weakness. I promise you I am passionate about fighting for the issues that impact the people here, and I won't give up on them.
Thank you both. I want to mention a couple of things real quickly, lest I forget them. The one person who didn't get introduced, because he started this off, is Ed Baum, and there's no one who has a more key and important role in making these happen than Edward Baum. So I want to make sure to express that view to everybody. I'd invite a round of applause for him. Lots of good questions came from you, and there's still a stack here we didn't have time for. So precisely 2 weeks from this evening, you're most assuredly welcome to come to the library in Nelsonville and send your question in again. It's just potluck, which ones come to the top, or as much, actually it's probably primarily the order in which they, but you're welcome to come. And let's see. I want to thank our candidates, Eddie and Sarah, and I want to thank the members of the news media, Sarah, David, Susan, Caitlin, and all of you for coming. And I always have to say just a little bit, I think the kind of political process we saw here would be magnificent to make copies of and send around the world to say, here is how local elections can be run. And seldom in this world, I think, do you have anything that can match this in terms of our joint community effort. So best wishing candidates, thanks everybody for coming.